Time at rest, exploring the past, slowly. Across Europe 30,000 years ago, the land is a vast mosaic of forests, rivers, and windswept plains. Sunlight falls in golden shafts through mist rising off frozen river valleys. And in the distance, herds of reindeer, horses, and mammoths move like living shadows across the steppe. Surrounded by members of your clan, you sit in a cave in the Ardèche region of southern France. The cool air heavy with smoke from a small fire. Horses gallop across stone. Lions crouch and stalk. Rhinoceroses clash in repeated outlines that seem to move before your eyes. Each mark, each shadow, each handprint is more than decoration. It is memory, knowledge, imagination. Your gaze shifts to a small ivory mammoth figurine in your hands, and you recall a recent crucial hunt before winter. The party had tracked a lone female for days across frozen plains. When the moment came, hunters closed in from multiple directions, thrusting spears with precise timing. The mammoth fell with a final shudder. The meat fed families. The hide became warm blankets. The bones and ivory were crafted into tools and symbolic objects, including this one in your hands. Without that hunt, survival through the harsh months would have been uncertain. As your thoughts soften and your heartbeat smiles, music emerges from hidden chambers. Bone flutes and driving rhythms reverberating through the cave, binding the community together in song. Every object, every gesture, every sound carries memory. The memory of the hunt, of the seasons, of the forces that shape life and death. These early humans developed technologies and symbolic systems that allowed them to gradually succeed Neanderthals in Europe, adapt to diverse and changing environments, and establish social networks spanning vast distances. Through painting, carving, and musical expression, they recorded the world they lived in and the lives they led, leaving enduring cultural footprints. In doing so, they laid the foundations for human culture across the continent, and, eventually, the world. Around 40,000 years ago, Europe lay under the restless rhythms of the Ice Age. Winds swept across broad grasslands, glaciers pressed southward from northern mountains, and vast herds of reindeer, horse, bison, and mammoth moved across open steppes stretching from Iberia to the plains of Eastern Europe. In caves and sheltered valleys, Neanderthal communities, long masters of these demanding environments, continued lifeways refined over hundreds of thousands of years. Seasonal storms swept dust across open plains. Winters locked rivers in ice for months, and survival depended on intimate knowledge of landscapes shaped by cold and scarcity. Europe was not empty wilderness, but a lived-in world already structured by human memory and movement. Then, along the continent's southeastern margins, a quiet transformation began. New travelers entered these landscapes, moving slowly along river corridors and coastal routes. They carried tools, knowledge, and social traditions shaped far beyond Europe. These newcomers were Homo sapiens, whose descendants would eventually populate the continent. Their arrival did not occur as a single event, but as many small movements, separated by generations, each group extending slightly farther into unfamiliar territory. They were once known as Cro-Magnons, a term now largely abandoned, because it refers only to human remains discovered at a single site in France, the Abri de Cro-Magnon, excavated in 1868, rather than a distinct people. Today, Scientists use broader labels such as early modern humans. Here, we will simply call them early humans. These individuals were not a primitive or separate species, but early Homo sapiens, anatomically and cognitively indistinguishable from modern humans. They possessed language, creativity, and complex social lives much like our own. The difference between them and us is not one of capability, but of time. Placed in the modern world, they would think, learn, and adapt as we do today. Their presence in Europe marks the beginning of the Upper Paleolithic, a period defined not by a single culture, but by changing traditions through time. The earliest widespread phase is known as the Aurignacian, dating roughly from 43,000 to 30,000 years ago. It is recognized through blade-based stone tools, bone points, and some of Europe's earliest figurative art. These technologies allowed more efficient hunting, improved clothing production, and expanded possibilities for survival in cold environments. Later cultures followed, as environments and technologies changed. The Gravettian period saw refined hunting tools and widespread figurines carved from ivory or stone. During the coldest phases of the Ice Age, the Solutrean tradition produced finely crafted stone points of remarkable precision. As climates improved, the Magdalenian period brought further expansion in technology and art, including harpoons, spear throwers, and some of Europe's most famous cave paintings. These names do not represent different peoples, but evolving cultural traditions as early humans adapted to changing conditions across Ice Age Europe. Each phase reflects accumulated knowledge, experimentation, and responses to shifting climates and prey populations, rather than sudden cultural replacement. The deeper roots of this story lie far beyond the continent. Across Africa, long before migration northward, communities were already displaying behaviors associated with modern humanity: ornament making, pitman use, long-distance material exchange, and increasingly refined tools. These developments reveal expanding social networks and cooperation that would later support expansion into new lands. Such networks helped groups survive environmental uncertainty, sharing information about droughts, resources, and movement routes across vast regions. Climate shifts gradually opened corridors beyond Africa. Grasslands expanded, coastlines shifted, and animal migrations created opportunities for exploration. Movement occurred slowly, families expanding their range generation by generation rather than in sudden migrations. Some groups may have paused for centuries in favorable regions before continuing onward, creating stepping stones of settlement across Western Asia. By the time these populations approached Europe, Neanderthals had long occupied the continent. For several thousand years, the two populations overlapped in parts of Eurasia. Genetic evidence shows that interbreeding occurred, leaving small amounts of Neanderthal DNA in most people outside Africa today. The transition that followed was gradual and varied from region to region, rather than sudden replacement. Some landscapes likely witnessed alternating occupations, with groups moving in and out as climates shifted and prey populations changed. Europe itself presented diverse challenges. Southern regions supported forests and river valleys rich in seasonal resources, while central and eastern areas open into vast mammoth steppe landscapes. Winters were severe and summers brief. Survival demanded planning, cooperation, and adaptability. Clothing sewn from hides, carefully maintained fire, and seasonal food storage would all have played essential roles in enduring long cold seasons. Some of the clearest evidence of these newcomers comes from the shelter in southwestern France, officially known in French as the Abri de Cromagnon. Excavations there revealed modern human burials accompanied by ornaments and tools typical of Upper Paleolithic life, confirming that people like us were living alongside mammoths and reindeer in Ice Age Europe. Burial goods suggest emotional bonds and symbolic thinking, indicating that death carried social and ritual meaning, rather than being treated merely as disposal of the body. Their arrival did not instantly transform the continent. Instead, small communities slowly established footholds across unfamiliar terrain. Camps appeared along rivers and plains, seasonal routes formed, and landscapes gradually became known through repeated travel. Over generations, paths taken by ancestors became expected seasonal journeys, linking memory to geography. Highly mobile families followed herds in seasons into lands shaped by earlier human populations, gradually becoming part of Europe's ecological and cultural fabric. Their arrival marked not an ending, but the beginning of transformations that would lead to new technologies, art, and lifeways across the continent. The foundation of later European history, every village, language, and culture ultimately traces back to these first expansions into Ice Age environs. Europe stood at a threshold, and humanity was stepping into a new chapter of its deep history. The story that follows is not simply about migration, but about how unfamiliar terrain slowly became homeland, and how small, resilient communities reshaped the human map of the world. Before we continue, consider supporting the creation of long-form historical documentaries like this one by subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment. Your engagement allows us to explore these deep human stories with care, detail, and imagination. And now, let us step together into the world of Europe's earliest modern humans, following the quiet genius and enduring vision that shaped both humanity and the landscapes it called home. Once early humans entered Europe, expansion did not occur through conquest or rapid population growth. Instead, movement unfolded slowly, as small kin groups explored new territories, adapting to unfamiliar climates and ecosystems over generations. Europe was not conquered, it was learned, season by season, valley by valley, through careful movement and accumulated experience. Geography guided this expansion. Major rivers, such as the Danube and Rhone, acted as natural travel corridors, leading deep into the continent. Rivers provided fresh water, attracted migrating animals, and offered access to stone needed for tool-making. Open valleys also made movement safer by improving visibility across the landscape. Travel along rivers also reduced risk, since watercourses offered predictable navigation routes through otherwise confusing terrain. Expansion consisted of families establishing seasonal territories rather than permanent settlements. Groups returned to productive areas while gradually extending their range. Camps appeared, disappeared, and reappeared as generations revisited familiar routes. A successful hunting ground or sheltered valley might draw repeated visits for centuries, building layered archaeological records from many brief occupations. Population density remained extremely low. Communities were small, often only a few dozen individuals spread across vast territories. Survival depended on flexibility. Herd migrations shifted, winters varied, and resources fluctuated, requiring constant adjustment. Entire regions may have gone unvisited for years at a time, only to be reoccupied when climate or prey movements made them favorable again. Archaeological sites reveal camps serving different purposes. Some locations were short-term hunting stops used for butchering animals. Others functioned as seasonal base camps where people stayed longer, producing tools, processing hides, and preparing food. Rock shelters and caves often provided recurring refuge and preserved many traces of repeated occupation. These shelters protected inhabitants from wind and snow, making them crucial winter locations. Daily life revolved around cooperation. Hunters repaired weapons while others prepared clothing, maintained fires, or cared for children and elders. Knowledge passed through observation and participation rather than writing. Toolmaking, tracking, and survival skills were learned through shared experience. Even routine tasks carried teaching value, embedding survival knowledge into everyday activity. Stone blade production formed the technological foundation of this period. Craftspeople shaped cores to produce long, efficient cutting edges that could be turned into knives, scrapers, or points mounted onto wooden shafts. Bone and antler tools expanded possibilities, especially for clothing production, necessary in cold climates. Portable toolkits allowed hunters to repair weapons far from camps, supporting long-distance mobility. The environments encountered were both rich and dangerous. Mammoth steppe ecosystems supported vast herds of grazing animals, but also predators such as cave lions and hyenas. Successful hunting required planning, coordination, and detailed knowledge of animal movement. A failed hunt could mean hunger, making cooperation and risk management essential parts of survival. Connections between communities helped reduce risk. Archaeological finds show materials transported across long distances, suggesting networks through which objects, knowledge, and marriage partners circulated. Such networks strengthened resilience when local conditions worsened. These exchanges also reinforced shared cultural traditions across distant regions. Climate fluctuations continually reshaped opportunities. Warmer phases allowed expansion into northern regions, while colder periods forced contraction into more favorable refuges. Expansion therefore occurred in pulses rather than steady progression. Groups sometimes retreated hundreds of kilometers before advancing again when climates improved. Over time, repeated travel turned unknown landscapes into familiar territories. Communities learned where animals crossed rivers, where good stone could be found, and where shelter protected against winter winds. Seasonal movement followed predictable ecological pathways, reinforced by shared memory. Stories and teaching preserved this knowledge, guiding younger generations across landscapes they had never yet seen. These people were not aimless wanderers. Their movements formed structured seasonal cycles linking camps, hunting grounds, and gathering places. Gradually, networks of routes stretched across the continent. What once seemed endless wilderness slowly became mapped in memory through experience and tradition. Within several thousand years, modern human presence spread from eastern entry points across Central Europe to western regions and the Iberian Peninsula, eventually reaching lands later separated as sea levels rose after the Ice Age. Population growth remained slow, yet mobility allowed remarkable geographic reach. The transformation of Europe unfolded slowly and unevenly. Some regions changed earlier, others later, but over time, modern human communities became the primary inhabitants of the continent. This transition was shaped by climate, ecology, and demographic change, rather than simple conflict. By the end of this early expansion, camps and travel routes became embedded in cultural memory. Technologies suited to mobility, cooperative social organization, and adaptability allowed communities to endure fluctuating climates and demanding environments. These foundations supported later cultural developments that would eventually reshape Europe after the Ice Age ended. The spread of early humans across Europe was a patient unfolding rather than sudden revolution. Families explored new horizons, adapted to changing conditions, and passed knowledge forward across generations. Unknown landscapes became lived territories, forming patterns of movement and survival that would shape Europe's human history for tens of thousands of years. Through countless small decisions, where to camp, when to move, how to hunt, Europe gradually became home. By the time early human communities had established seasonal territories across much of Europe, the challenge was no longer simply reaching new lands, but learning how to live within them, year after year. Familiar valleys, river crossings, and hunting grounds now formed part of remembered landscapes, and survival depended on mastering the demanding rhythms of Ice Age environments. The environments these communities occupied were strikingly diverse. Southern Europe offered mixed forests, wetlands, and mountain refuges rich in deer, wild cattle, and smaller game. Central and Eastern Europe opened onto the vast mammoth steppe, where dry winds swept across plains supporting mammoths, horses, bison, and reindeer. Farther north, advancing and retreating ice sheets reshaped ecosystems over generations, forcing communities to adjust continually. Survival required intelligence, planning, and cooperation, supported by networks of knowledge passed through families and allied groups. Some of the earliest evidence of these communities adapting successfully to European conditions comes from Bachar Cave in Bulgaria. Human remains dated to roughly 45,000 years ago were discovered alongside blades and personal ornaments, indicating that symbolic culture and advanced tool-making already accompanied the first modern humans entering the continent. Retouched blades, bone tools, and beads show technological traditions with deep roots, while also revealing adaptations suited to colder European climates. Bachar represents an early foothold in the long process through which unfamiliar territory gradually became inhabited landscape. As generations passed, occupation spread westward into regions such as France and the Iberian Peninsula, where archaeological sites reveal increasingly complex lifeways. The Cromagnon rock shelter in Mazizes remains central to understanding this period. Burials there include ornaments made from shells and animal teeth, alongside stone blades and bone implements, revealing a blending of practical survival tools with symbolic expression. These communities were not simply enduring harsh climates, they were shaping environments into lived places, where technology, memory, and culture intertwined. Technological sophistication formed the backbone of survival. Craftspeople refined blade production by striking long cutting edges from prepared stone cores, creating efficient tools suited for hunting, butchering, and hide processing. Composite weapons, stone points hafted onto wooden or bone shafts, improved hunting success against large and dangerous prey. Sites such as Aurignac Cave reveal bone points, engraving tools, and hide-working implements that define the Aurignacian toolkit. These innovations allowed more reliable hunting, better clothing production, and improved preparation for long winters. Technology alone, however, did not ensure survival. Success depended equally on understanding seasonal cycles and animal behavior. Hunters tracked migrations, learned where herds crossed rivers, and predicted where animals gathered during seasonal changes. Camps were positioned to take advantage of these movements, allowing communities to intercept prey at favorable moments rather than chase animals across vast landscapes. Mobility remained essential, but now, movement followed known seasonal cycles. Rock shelters provided winter refuge, while open camps near rivers or plains supported hunting and gathering during warmer months. Over time, these routes became embedded in memory, forming mental maps transmitted across generations. Archaeological evidence shows that people maintained awareness of distant resources. Marine shells carried inland, flint from distant quarries, and pigments shared among communities. Such exchange networks fostered alliances and cultural cohesion across wide territories. Symbolic behavior became increasingly visible during this period. People decorated themselves with ivory beads, perforated teeth, and pigments, often placed in burial contexts. These ornaments signal identity, belonging, and possibly status within communities. Cultural expression expanded further into cave art. By roughly 35,000 years ago, sites such as Chauvet preserve images of lions, horses, and rhinoceroses, rendered with striking realism and motion. Artistic expression reveals not only technical skill, but also shared storytelling traditions that bound communities together through memory and meaning. Hunting strategies demanded flexibility. Large prey such as mammoths or bison required coordinated group action, careful planning, and shared risk. Smaller animals supplemented diets and reduced dependence on dangerous hunts. Multifunctional tools allowed hides to be processed for clothing and shelter, weapons repaired, and portable toolkits maintained during long journeys. Archaeologists infer that seasonal aggregation sites allowed dispersed groups to gather, exchange partners, share knowledge, and reinforce alliances. Vital mechanisms in environments where isolation could prove fatal. Climate fluctuations continued shaping lifeways. Warmer intervals opened new territories, while colder phases forced contraction into refuges where resources remained dependable. Archaeological layers reflect these oscillations, with sites appearing and disappearing in step with environmental change. Innovations in clothing production, shelter construction, and hunting tools reveal continual responses to environmental pressure. Adaptability, rather than brute strength, allowed early human populations to thrive in regions where survival conditions could change within a few generations. Sites such as Bochokiro, Les Izes, and Aurignac reveal communities not merely surviving, but actively shaping the landscapes they inhabited. Portable tools, ornaments, and artistic expression show people creating continuity in meaning, even while living highly mobile lives. Seasonal camps, exchange networks, and symbolic traditions maintained cohesion as communities spread across vast territories. During this period, Europe's human landscape was changing gradually rather than through sudden upheaval. In some regions, Neanderthal populations declined before modern human settlement became established. In others, both groups occupied neighboring territories for generations. The transition unfolded unevenly, shaped by environment, demography, and adaptation, rather than simple confrontation. By around 35,000 years ago, modern human communities had become firmly established across much of the continent. Technological skill, cooperative social organization, and cultural expression defined the Upper Paleolithic world taking shape. Networks of camps, exchange routes, and seasonal territories structured how people moved and lived across Europe's demanding environments. Across plains, rivers, and caves, these communities created footholds that anchored the unfolding story of Ice Age Europe. They were innovators, artists, and social beings adapting to new conditions while carrying traditions formed far beyond the continent. Each tool, ornament, and painting reveals how people survived, thrived, and created meaning within landscapes shaped by ice, wind, and time. Around 40,000 years ago, Europe's landscapes formed a shifting patchwork shaped by Ice Age climates. Forests stretched through southern valleys, while central plains and eastern steppes supported immense grazing herds. Winters could lock rivers under ice for months, while brief summers triggered bursts of plant and animal activity. For early humans, survival depended on understanding these seasonal rhythms and adapting movement and subsistence strategies to changing conditions. Mobility lay at the center of life. Groups followed seasonal rounds, moving between sheltered winter camps in caves or rock overhangs and open summer camps near migrating herds. River valleys served as natural corridors, offering water, food, and easier travel through otherwise difficult terrain. Over generations, repeated journeys created mental maps spanning hundreds of kilometers, linking communities across Europe through kinship and shared knowledge. Hunting methods reflected flexibility and cooperation. In wooded areas, early humans targeted deer, wild cattle, and boar through ambush tactics and coordinated drives. Across open plains, hunters pursued horses, bison, and reindeer, sometimes guiding herds toward natural traps or terrain barriers. Composite spears, stone-tipped projectiles, and throwing weapons allowed hunters to strike at safer distances, while bone and antler tools helped process meat, craft clothing, and build shelters capable of withstanding wind and cold. Survival relied not only on technology, but on cooperation and experience shared across generations. Hunting, however, was only one part of subsistence. Early humans also relied heavily on gathering and foraging. The landscapes they crossed, steppe grasslands, forest pockets, wetlands, and river valleys, offered roots, tubers, berries, nuts, and edible greens, appearing in predictable seasonal cycles. Knowledge of where and when these foods emerged formed an essential survival skill, passed orally within communities. Gathering provided stability when hunts failed. Plant foods were renewable and often less dangerous to obtain than confronting large prey. People learned to recognize subtle environmental cues, flowering plants signaling edible roots below, or ripening berries marking seasonal change. Such knowledge allowed communities to endure even when animal migrations shifted elsewhere. Foraging also extended to aquatic environments. Rivers and lakes supplied fish and freshwater mollusks, while wetlands produced edible plants that attracted both animals and humans. Smaller animals such as hares and birds supplemented diets, and opportunistic scavenging likely occurred when conditions allowed. Flexibility remained crucial in landscapes where climate shifts could alter food availability within a generation. Food storage, though limited compared to later farming societies, still mattered. Cold climates sometimes allowed meat to be preserved naturally in snowbanks or shaded crevices. Evidence of repeated half-use suggests meat may also have been smoked or dried. Fat rendered from large animals provided a vital calorie source and could be stored in hide containers, while marrow-rich bones and dried nuts or roots offered reserves for lean periods. Such strategies helped communities endure winter shortages and unpredictable weather. Cooking played a central role in daily life. Hearths provided warmth and life, while enabling meat and plants to be roasted or boiled with heated stones. Fire softened food, neutralized toxins in some plants, and improved safety and nutrition. Evenings around hearths likely served as moments for teaching, storytelling, and reinforcing group bonds, as survival knowledge passed between generations. Gathering and foraging also shaped social organization. Large game hunts required coordinated effort, but plant gathering and small game collection often occurred in smaller groups. Children learned early which foods were safe or medicinal, ensuring knowledge spread widely within communities. This distribution of skills increased resilience. Survival did not depend solely on successful hunts. Social networks extended beyond individual camps. Exchange networks connected groups across large distances, as shown by stone materials, shells, and pigments transported far from their sources. Such exchanges fostered alliances and shared knowledge, offering security in unstable climates where knowing friendly territories could prove vital. Europe's varied terrain encouraged regional adaptations. Alpine communities specialized in hunting mountain species such as ibex, while eastern plains supported cooperative bison hunts. On the mammoth steppe, survival demanded long-distance mobility across open, windy terrain with sparse vegetation. Communities adjusted tools and strategies to local environments, demonstrating remarkable adaptability across the continent. Archaeological sites reveal these practices in daily life. Camps preserve hearths, animal bones bearing cut marks, and stone debris from tool repair. Specialized tools, hide scrapers, carving implements, and cutting blades demonstrate how technology supported clothing production and food preparation. While each site reflects local conditions, together they show populations deeply attuned to environmental rhythms. Symbolism and survival often intertwined. Ornaments and pigments traveled with communities, signaling identity and strengthening connections between groups. Shared symbols likely helped maintain alliances and social cohesion across large distances. Even amid harsh climates, people invested time in decoration and expression, weaving culture into survival. Climate remained a constant influence. Sudden swings between colder and warmer intervals repeatedly forced communities to shift territories. During colder phases, populations retreated southward. During warmer periods, they expanded north again. Generations accumulated knowledge about safe migration routes and seasonal resources, embedding foresight into survival strategies. By this stage, early humans were becoming active participants in Europe's ecosystems. Hunting influenced animal behavior, camps were revisited across generations, and subsistence practices grew increasingly refined. Communities learned not only to survive, but to anticipate environmental change. Across Europe, seasonal migration, cooperative hunting, gathering, food preservation, and social exchange created a resilient foundation for life. Early humans navigated plains, forests, rivers, and mountains with skills shaped by shared memory and experience. No longer newcomers, they had become integral to Europe's Ice Age landscapes, establishing lifeways that would endure for tens of thousands of years. And as survival strategies grew more reliable, life was no longer defined solely by the search for food and shelter. Within caves and camps, around hearthfires and across gathering places, people invested more time in expression, storytelling, and shared identity. The same communities that mastered Europe's seasons also began leaving deeper marks of imagination and belief, traces that survive today in paint, carving, and ritual spaces. Survival in Ice Age Europe relied on more than hunting skill or technological ingenuity. It depended on people, on cooperation, shared knowledge, and the ability to maintain relationships across vast, often harsh landscapes. Early modern human populations did not live as isolated families. Instead, they formed flexible social networks that connected groups across regions, enabling cooperation, exchange, and cultural continuity over generations. At the core of this social world were small kin-based groups. Most communities likely consisted of extended families numbering 20 to 40 individuals, though numbers varied seasonally. Groups could split when resources were scarce and reunite when conditions improved, creating fluid social units capable of adapting to shifting circumstances. Mobility required this flexibility. Families moved with migrating herds, changing climate zones, and seasonal resources, rather than remaining tied to a single location. Children played a crucial role in maintaining cultural continuity. Skills essential for survival, stone knapping, hide working, hunting strategies, and environmental awareness were learned through participation and observation. Young members watched elders carve bone, shape blades, or prepare hides near the fire. Gradually, they practiced under supervision, absorbing knowledge over years of apprenticeship. Tradition was embedded not in writing but in lived experience, passed down from generation to generation. Oral communication formed the backbone of cultural transmission. Stories shared around hearths preserved memory of distant landscapes, successful hunting grounds, and dangerous territories. They reinforced group identity, recounting origins, relationships with animals, and shared histories. Memory was a survival tool, guiding future movements and shaping decisions across generations. Social networks extended far beyond individual bands. Archaeological evidence reveals materials transported over hundreds of kilometers. Marine shells from distant coasts, distinctive flints carried from far-off quarries, and ornaments with shared styles appearing across multiple regions. Such patterns suggest regular contact between groups, whether through direct travel or chains of exchange linking distant communities. These networks served multiple purposes. Trade reinforced alliances and maintained peaceful relations between neighboring groups. Marriage partners were sought beyond immediate communities, preventing genetic isolation and strengthening connections across territories. Information about climate, herd movements, or resource availability could travel along these social pathways, helping groups adapt before crises emerged. Personal ornaments held visible significance in this social landscape. Beads carved from ivory, pierced animal teeth, shells, and decorated pendants appear across Europe. They required skill and time to produce, indicating importance beyond mere decoration. Worn on clothing or the body, ornaments may have signaled group membership, personal achievements, or links to particular places or traditions. Some show signs of long use, smoothed by wear or repaired when damaged, suggesting emotional or symbolic value. In mobile societies, such items functioned as portable memories, carrying identity across the landscape. Seasonal gatherings likely brought multiple groups together. Resource-rich sites, river crossings during migrations, productive fishing grounds, or sheltered valleys served as natural assembly points. Here, communities exchanged goods, renewed social ties, and shared stories, reinforcing cultural bonds. Such gatherings also allowed young adults to meet potential partners, maintaining genetic diversity. Cooperation, feasting, and storytelling may have been intertwined with ritual and symbolic practices, weaving social life with cultural expression. Interactions with Neanderthal populations also formed part of this social landscape. Genetic evidence shows interbreeding occurred as modern humans expanded into Europe, leaving traces still present today. These interactions likely varied. Some encounters involved competition, others cooperation, and some peaceful coexistence in overlapping territories. While archaeology rarely preserves direct scenes of interaction, the genetic record confirms that boundaries between populations were sometimes permeable. Daily life revolved around cooperation. Tasks such as hide preparation, tool repair, childcare, and food processing required collective effort. Division of labor reflected age, experience, and skill, rather than rigid roles. Elders preserved knowledge, skilled hunters provided meat, craft workers produced reliable tools. Survival depended on contributions from all members. Fossil evidence also suggests care for injured or elderly individuals, highlighting compassion and long-term social responsibility. Groups that protected vulnerable members preserved knowledge and strengthened collective resilience. Sound and performance may have supported social cohesion. While musical instruments become clearer in later Upper Paleolithic contexts, early rhythmic sounds, bone percussion, clapping, or vocalization likely accompanied storytelling or ritual activity. Echoing caves could amplify voices, turning gatherings into shared sensory experiences that reinforced group bonds. Landscape itself shaped identity. Seasonal movements across familiar territories built connections with valleys, rivers, and hunting grounds. Stories anchored to these places preserved navigational knowledge while reinforcing belonging. Over generations, landscapes became embedded in social memory, forming mental maps connecting people to land and ancestors. Conflict likely occurred when resources became scarce or territories overlapped. But extensive exchange networks may have reduced the frequency of violence. Communication and cooperation offered alternatives to confrontation, allowing negotiation, relocation, or temporary alliances. Mortuary practices, though limited in early records, hint at emerging traditions of honoring the dead. Symbolic objects carried by communities may have maintained continuity with those who had passed, linking the living with memory and ancestry. Through these interconnected networks, early humans built resilient societies capable of navigating rapid climatic fluctuations and ecological uncertainty. Cooperation enabled adaptation, shared knowledge prevented repeated mistakes, and social bonds sustained communities through difficult seasons. Communities remained small in number, but large in connection, linked through marriage, exchange, memory, and tradition. Movement did not fragment society, it created new links across the continent. In the glow of hearth fires inside caves and shelters, elders told stories, while tools were shaped and hides prepared. Children learned by observing, absorbing traditions carried from distant ancestors who first entered Europe. Ornamented clothing, exchanged objects, and shared rituals reinforced identity across generations. This social world, built from cooperation, memory, and shared identity, proved as essential to survival as hunting skill or technology. It allowed people to endure shifting climates, expanding ice, and migrating herds, connecting distant communities across open plains, forests, and mountains. And as these networks matured, they laid the foundation for a profound cultural leap. With survival increasingly secured, communities turned attention to symbolic expression, art, and ritual. Social memory, imagination, and identity began finding enduring form on cave walls, carved ivory, and in other material traces, marking a new chapter in Europe's Upper Paleolithic story. As early humans established networks of kinship, exchange, and cooperation across Ice Age Europe, their social life created the conditions for something remarkable: the emergence of symbolic expression. Survival was no longer the sole focus. Across plains, river valleys, and mountain corridors, people began to interpret their world, to invest it with meaning, and to communicate ideas through objects, images, and sound. Art was not separate from life, it was embedded in the rhythms of daily existence, reinforcing identity, memory, and social cohesion. Deep within limestone caves, beyond the reach of daylight, humans left the earliest enduring traces of this imagination. Lines etched or painted on stone walls depict animals with fluid motion, overlapping forms, and precise observation. Meanwhile, small carvings of ivory and bone traveled with mobile communities, moving across valleys and plains. Pigments-colored tools, personal ornaments, and possibly even human skin, embedding meaning into both people and objects. These expressions reveal that early humans did more than survive. They observed, interpreted, and communicated the world around them. Personal ornaments are among the clearest evidence of symbolic communication. Archaeological sites across Europe have yielded beads crafted from pierced animal teeth, shells carried inland from distant coasts, and carved ivory pendants polished through years of handling. The labor-intensive creation of these objects demonstrates deliberate investment of time and skill, reflecting social significance beyond decoration. Teeth from predators, or deer, may have symbolized admired animal qualities, while shells or exotic stones highlight the networks connecting groups across wide territories. Wearing these objects likely signaled identity, group membership, or achievement, providing a portable language of recognition across seasonal gatherings. Pigments added further symbolic depth. Red ochre, black manganese, and other mineral colors appear in caves, on tools, and occasionally on personal ornaments. Ground, transported, and stored carefully. These substances were applied to bodies, objects, and walls, marking events, identity, or ritual moments. Though the exact meanings are elusive, the consistency and care in pigment use suggest that color was a structured system of communication, interwoven with practical and ceremonial life. Caves themselves became spaces of intentional symbolism. While many rock shelters served as seasonal dwellings, decorated chambers often lie deep within cave systems, requiring torches or lamps fueled with animal fat to illuminate their interiors. These secluded locations suggest deliberate journeys for storytelling, ritual, or collective experience, rather than daily survival. Among the most extraordinary examples of early cave art is Chauvet and Aurignac in southern France, dating roughly 36 to 30,000 years ago. Preserved for millennia, it contains over 400 animal depictions, many representing creatures rarely hunted: lions, rhinoceroses, and cave bears. The quality of these images demonstrates artistic mastery from the earliest European occupations. Certain panels show striking technical sophistication. The horse panel layers multiple heads in rhythmic composition, charcoal shading giving depth and motion. The lion panel depicts coordinated movement, lions stretching forward mid-stride. A rhinoceros frieze overlays outlines to suggest animals moving across the wall, an early attempt to capture motion. Elsewhere, red ochre handprints mark presence, identity, or participation, hinting at ritual or social signaling. Symbolic combinations appear in extraordinary imagery, such as a stylized female lower body paired with a bison head. Such hybrid forms suggest storytelling, myth-making, or ritual association linking humans and animals, reflecting abstract thought that extends beyond direct observation of nature. Repeated depictions of horses, bison, mammoths, reindeer, lions, and rhinoceroses indicate not only practical knowledge of prey, but also deeper cultural and symbolic significance. Portable art extended these symbolic practices beyond caves. In the Swabian Jura of modern Germany, early humans carved mammoth ivory into small detailed sculptures of animals around 40,000 years ago. These portable objects, horses, lions, mammoths, were small enough to be carried, yet rendered with careful observation, suggesting their role in storytelling, ritual, or personal identity. Among the most remarkable is the Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel, a hybrid figure merging human body and cave lion head. Crafted from mammoth ivory over hundreds of hours, it demonstrates imagination, myth-making, and symbolic sophistication. Other sites, such as Vogelherd Cave, produced similar figurines smoothed by repeated handling, perhaps functioning as amulets or teaching aids during migrations. Early female figurines, like the Venus of Hohlofels, emphasize reproductive features, suggesting shared symbolic themes of continuity, fertility, or survival across regions. These objects reflect the movement of ideas alongside people, linking dispersed communities through portable symbols. Artistic experimentation also appears in engravings incised into bone and ivory. Simple lines, abstract shapes, or animal outlines show early attempts at representation and practice in visual communication before monumental cave painting became widespread. Sound complemented these visual symbols. Flutes carved from bird bones or mammoth ivory in the Swabian Jura demonstrate that music accompanied visual art, reinforcing storytelling, ritual, and group cohesion. In echoing chambers, sound transformed spaces into immersive cultural experiences. Creating cave art required planning, cooperation, and skill. Artists selected surfaces with care, sometimes using natural rock contours to enhance forms. Flickering torchlight animated figures, creating motion and depth. The effort needed to work in deep, dark chambers suggests that painting was an intentional act with social, educational, or ritual purpose, rather than casual decoration. Art also reinforced ecological knowledge. Observing and reproducing animal movement demanded careful attention, memory, and understanding of behavior, information vital for younger generations learning to track, hunt, and survive. Symbolism and daily life were inseparable. Tools, materials, and techniques used for survival also enabled artistic creation. Through these practices, landscapes became repositories of memory and meaning. Portable carvings carried identity and stories across generations, while cave paintings anchored cultural knowledge to specific sites. Communities could imagine worlds beyond immediate survival, linking past, present, and future through material expression. As climates fluctuated and populations adapted, symbolic traditions evolved rather than disappeared. Knowledge passed forward, blending into later Upper Paleolithic cultures, ensuring that the creativity and imagination of Europe's early humans shaped subsequent generations. From deep caves to portable figurines, their art shows that survival and imagination were deeply intertwined, and that the earliest Europeans were already capable of creating meaning that transcended immediate necessity. In this emerging world of symbols, color, form, and sound, social memory and human ingenuity coalesced. As the long human story unfolds across deep time, clarity begins to replace detail. Individual sites, tools, and traditions fade slightly into the background, and a broader pattern comes into view. What stands out is not the rise or fall of any single cultural expression, but the persistence of a way of living, one capable of absorbing change without breaking, of carrying knowledge forward even as landscapes shift beneath it. For early European humans, survival was never about permanence. Ice advanced and retreated. Forests opened and closed. Herds changed their routes across plains, valleys, and mountain margins. In response, people did not anchor themselves to fixed places or rigid solutions. Instead, they developed lives structured around movement, memory, and adaptability. Their stability came not from staying still, but from knowing how to move, when to return, when to leave, and how to recognize familiarity within constant motion. Across thousands of years, this approach proved remarkably resilient. Technologies were not designed to be perfect or final, but to be useful, repairable, and adaptable. Stone tools were shaped within systems that emphasized predictability and maintenance. Organic materials, bone, antler, hide, fiber, expanded what tools could do, allowing people to make clothing, shelters, and equipment suited to a wide range of conditions. Innovation occurred, but it was grounded in continuity. New ideas layered themselves onto older foundations, rather than replacing them outright. Movement itself became a form of accumulated knowledge. Seasonal routes were learned through repetition. Familiar shelters were revisited, their use renewed across generations. Some places gathered meaning through repeated return. Locations where memory thickened over time. These were not permanent settlements, but anchors within a mobile world, helping people orient themselves within landscapes that were always changing. Within this broad framework, variation flourished naturally. Different environments encouraged different emphasis in toolkits and movement strategies. Local materials shaped how stone was worked and how organic tools were formed. Social rhythms adjusted to regional conditions. Yet, despite this diversity, the underlying structure remained recognizable across vast distances. People could move widely without losing coherence because they shared systems rather than fixed forms. Later, archaeologists would divide this record into named periods and traditions, including what we now call the Upper Paleolithic. These terms help organize evidence, but they do not reflect how life was experienced at the time. For the people themselves, there were no cultural borders, only inherited practices refined through daily use. Knowledge passed quietly between generations, embedded in hands, habits, and shared expectations, rather than formal instruction. This continuity becomes most visible when viewed against challenge. Climate instability defined much of this span. Cold intensified, then relaxed. Resources became scarce in some regions and abundant in others. Yet again and again, people adjusted without abandoning the systems that sustained them. Tools were repaired rather than discarded. Movement patterns shifted slightly rather than collapsing. Social networks expanded or contracted as needed, maintaining connection across distance. Symbolic life played a crucial role in this resilience. Imagination was not separate from survival, it was part of it. Images, ornaments, pigments, and stories allowed people to share meaning across time and space. These expressions help maintain identity, reinforce belonging, and carry memory forward. In some places, symbolic traces accumulated across generations, turning parts of the landscape into long-term reference points. Returning to these locations strengthened continuity, binding people not only to land, but to shared history. Cooperation was equally central. Survival in Ice Age environments required more than individual skill. It depended on shared knowledge about roots, materials, animals, and seasons. Social networks extended beyond immediate groups, allowing information to circulate widely. These networks made it possible to respond collectively to change, spreading risk and reinforcing resilience. Trust, recognition, and shared practices held communities together, even as they moved apart. Adaptability tied all of this together. Early humans did not rely on a single strategy or prey species. They adjusted to regional diversity, shifting diets and changing conditions. Seasonal movement prevented overuse of resources and encouraged familiarity with broad territories. This flexibility was not chaotic. It was patterned, remembered, and taught. Taken together, these traits formed something more powerful than any single innovation. Imagination supported meaning and memory. Innovation provided practical solutions, complex tools, clothing, shelters. Cooperation allowed knowledge to spread and persist. Adaptability ensured survival across diverse environments. Mobility connected all of it, allowing people to carry these systems wherever they went. The result was a super-adaptive cultural system, a survival engine capable of enduring extreme variability without losing cohesion. This is why early humans were ultimately so successful in Europe and beyond. Their strength did not lie in dominance or speed, but in balance. They learned how to change without severing connection to what came before. They built lives that could stretch across space and time, capable of absorbing pressure while remaining intelligible to those living within them. As time moved forward, subtle shifts accumulated. Certain practices became more standardized in some regions. Patterns of movement reorganized slightly. Symbolic expressions changed emphasis. These changes foreshadowed later developments, but they did not announce abrupt endings. What followed grew out of what already existed, shaped by long-established rhythms rather than sudden breaks. The continuity of knowledge was never lost. Across tens of thousands of years, Europe is not erased and rewritten, but layered. Each generation added to what already existed, adjusting without forgetting. The success of early humans lies precisely here, in their ability to meet challenge without abandoning continuity, to adapt without losing identity. Even today, the same capacities that carried early humans through ice and uncertainty, imagination, innovation, cooperation, adaptability, and mobility, continue to guide us. These traits shaped not only their survival, but the very foundation of human resilience, creativity, and connection across generations. Their journey is not distant history, but the source of our own abilities to learn, adapt, and create meaning in a world that constantly changes. In their story, we recognize ourselves, part of a continuum that stretches from frozen plains to our present, inheriting the endurance, ingenuity, and spirit that allowed them to thrive. Still moving, still learning, still imagining, we carry forward the legacy of deep time, illuminated by the past and alive within us.